Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. On this episode, I will be speaking with founder and CEO of Future Cardia, Jaeson Bang. Future Cardia is an innovative medtech company developing a minimally invasive implantable device that allows for the continuous tracking of heart arrhythmia events in patients that have heart complications, such as atrial fibrillation. The most important and impactful word to focus on here is continuous. You see, when I was in my early 20s, I actually experienced a pretty significant heart arrhythmia episode of my own. Unfortunately, after that episode, the doctors were never able to catch another episode, even when I would feel them coming on. This is due to the fact that heart monitors have historically been a large external device that you'd wear for a week or two with clunky patches on your chest and a heavy monitor in your pocket. Unfortunately, these monitors have been shown to be fairly inaccurate, and if a patient doesn't have an episode in the limited period when they are wearing it, doctors simply have no data to go off of to think about how they might treat or manage you. That is why Future Cardia is a major innovation in the heart monitoring space that is going to help doctors and patients to have peace of mind and better health outcomes. A few things that stood out to me in this episode were first, this innovative technology solution is the smallest, most energy efficient, and minimally invasive continuous monitor that will ever hit the market, which means that patients can have the device inserted underneath the skin near their heart in minutes and have continuous, accurate monitoring for 2 years. That is a level of accurate, continuous monitoring that we haven't seen in the market, which could help Future Cardia quickly become a first-line heart monitoring solution. Second, Jaeson comes with many years industry experience. Importantly, he comes with significant sales and distribution experience. This is often a deeply overlooked aspect of building a medtech or biotech company, when the company is run by a scientist rather than a business person. Having someone who already knows how to go to market is essential to driving adoption in the market, especially one as complex and regulated as a heart monitoring space. Lastly, the heart monitoring market is still deeply antiquated, and there are only 2 other monitoring systems that offer any sort of continuous monitoring out there. As a multi-billion-dollar growing market, the opportunity to gain market share and significant revenues in the next 3 to 5 years is clear. So with that, let's get on to the show and welcome Jaeson. Jay, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know you, let's get a little bit of background on yourself and how you came to found Future Cardia.
Sure. So my background is in implantable cardiac devices, sales and business development. So I was at Medtronic selling pacemakers and defibrillators, which is one of the biggest division within Medtronic. And from there, I luckily got involved in product development and moved on from there. So I went to 2 startup companies, heavily funded companies funded by Johnson & Johnson, New Enterprise Associates, so the heavyweights of the implantable device, medical device industry. And then those 2 companies actually went public. And I also worked for Abiomed, which had a $16 billion acquisition early last year. So Medtronic gave me the foundation from a big company perspective, commercialization perspective, and then I was able to transition to the startups and the private equity funded company. During that time, I was very fortunate to work in Europe for 2 years. So me and my wife, we moved to Europe for 2 years, run the operations there. And, with cardiac disease, it's very, very traumatic surgery. Open neck, open chest, open groin type of surgeries. And, patients go through a very, very complex and tough surgical procedure. And after all that's done, we just basically give them something in a plastic bag and send them home. So I thought, gosh, there's something we can do better to monitor them and help them at home, because that's where they are the most vulnerable. So decided to come back to US and started this company. And that was almost 4.5 years ago.
Wow. So it sounds like you're kind of sales, business development side. Let's talk about the scientific side of this. What does your team look like, and how have you come to develop this product?
Sure. When I was doing the product work, I was the middleman. So engineers were building things that were too complicated. It didn't make sense for the regular people. And the physicians were asking for things that we couldn't build. So I was the middleman saying no to everybody. And that kind of helped me to transition into the medical device on the startup side, where I work with everybody consistently. And my team actually is obviously the expert in the development of implantable cardiac devices and cardiology. So we have over 200 years of experience in that space alone. Just we're like hyper focused in one specific specialty. So one of my colleagues had a huge exit to LivaNova, so he came to us, and then one of our senior executive was head of the clinical and regulatory operations for the biggest companies in medical space. So combined, we've got a bunch of dirty dozen type of characters with over 200 years of expertise.
When we talk about this space, I mean, what you're building, I think, is very, very innovative. Talk about what exists in the heart monitoring space today, and how is FutureCardia kind of disrupting and providing something that's differentiated and really improving the patient experience?
Sure. So the wearables are ideal for short term. So if you have some kind of a problem that you can't figure it out, that's the first line of a defense. So you should put that on, and that is indicated. So physician will do that for you. But we have a problem with this patient population that has a chronic cardiac condition. So 1 week patch or 2 week patches are not going to help that patient in the long run. It might help him in the beginning, but not in the long run. So for long run, we have a product that goes inside the heart in a heart procedure. It's a surgery, vascular surgery or cardiac cath lab type of surgery. Incredibly accurate, but obviously very expensive, complex, and traumatic for the patients. So we got these two opposing forces. We've got something very simple that's good for short term. We've got something very complex that is expensive and complex. So there's a huge middle ground that is not being utilized. So ours is under the skin. That's it. Just put a monitor, a pacemaker technology type of monitor under the skin, so patient doesn't have to do anything. So that is the gap that we're going after.
And what types of things can it track? Is it, like AFib and different types of arrhythmias? What is it looking for?
It's looking for AFib primarily. So if the patient has regular heartbeat and then irregular heartbeat, regular heartbeat, irregular heartbeat. So it's one of those things that you can't pinpoint. It's one of those Murphy's Law thing. You go to the ER with this huge problem, and they're like, we don't see it. There's nothing there. I know you have it, but we cannot document what you had previously. So we're going to kind of defer you to a cardiologist. And the same cycle of we don't see it continues to happen. So our device would monitor ECG for up to 2 years. And it will record regular and irregular beats, so we can document that information for the physician. And also we do heart sound capabilities that monitors heart failure. That's even bigger problem than the AFib. So patients with heart failure already have a sick heart. So how do you know how sick it is? Do you go to the ER or do you wait it out? And obviously both decisions have a huge consequence for the patients and the family members.
Yeah, so there's the world where you have to get this implant directly into your heart, which could be a very invasive surgery. You have the versions of wearing a patch, which, maybe for a couple weeks you don't even catch something because in that couple weeks it doesn't happen. And now you have this device that you're developing where you get to look at it on a continuous basis for a couple of years. So first off, after those couple of years, do they have to come in and get a new device? And second, what does a procedure look like? I know it goes under the skin, but tell us a little bit more about what that procedure actually looks like.
Sure. So the device itself, actually I have it right here. The device itself is self-sustained with a battery. So this darker metal part is the actual implantable titanium battery, titanium enclosed battery. And all the computer chips are inside this portion. And then it's implanted just under the skin. And with all implantable bioelectronics like pacemakers and defibrillators, when the battery runs out, you take it out and you replace it in. And then I actually have the actual implant video. If you have and this is all it takes. It's a 2-minute office procedure. We'll make a tiny little pocket into the skin. Patient's fully awake. and then we'll make a slightly bigger pocket.
Mm.
So we'll just numb up that region, and then we make a little bit of pocket. And then he's pretty much done. Now he's waiting for the device to be handed over. He's actually like, come on guys, I'm waiting for this. And you can even hear the heart rate going up because the patient knows it's going in. And we're done. That's it.
Wow.
And then we just put a tiny little one stitch, and then 5 days later, this is what it looks like on the patient's chest.
Wow.
So 2-minute office procedure. We usually do this in the outpatient clinic or in the office. I used to implant something much bigger in children in Europe. So pretty non-traumatic, super simple procedure. Some physicians even put just a little tape over it. But because this was the first time we're doing it, we asked them to put a little stitching in, just for the patient safety.
It's a pretty incredible procedure, 2 minutes and it's in. So is that would occur every 2 years once you have the device implanted?
Yep. So like all pacemakers and defibrillators with the what we call implantable bioelectric devices, they all have a self-sustained battery. So we have to take out the device and put a new one in. So that's it.
In terms of the monitoring, are you able to access all of that information directly on your phone? And does that also go to the doctor in real time? How does that work?
Near real time. So we're looking for chronic condition. So we're not looking for emergency. My gosh, at 2 a.m. right now, we got to see this patient. So we're not doing that. So all the data is securely sent to the phone, and phone sends it up to the cloud where it's stored and analyzed. And today's what? Tuesday? So physician would, generally speaking, he will look at it maybe Wednesday, Thursday, maybe even Friday, and say, oh, we saw this, and now we can make a decision based on that data.
You've implanted this in 36 patients, I believe.
Yeah, 39.
39.
Yeah.
Where does that, how many more patients will you need to be in, and how much more data do you need before you'll kind of get full FDA approval to move forward and be able to commercialize this?
Sure. So we're done in terms of the implants. So we're gathering our information and submit these to FDA probably by the end of the year or beginning of next year, which is a huge milestone for any companies to do that, especially for implantable electronics. So we are very much ahead of time on that. And the FDA process for something like this takes usually 6 months. So our goal is to obtain the clearance by mid of next year.
Understood. And then in terms of commercialization strategy, what team members are you bringing on, and what do you think kind of the efforts are going to take to kind of get that initial, early adopters utilizing this, the physicians utilizing this?
Right. That's going to be a challenge. So to put this into perspective, for us to get a hospital contract, it's going to take 2 years. Even if a CEO and a medical director says, I want this tomorrow, it still takes really, really long time. So we're not going to do the hospitals. We're going to focus on outpatient clinics, which will take a couple weeks at most to get their contract and get on the shelf, and physician offices. So much faster to execute unit sales. And because of these are what we call electrophysiology or very specialized field, there is a group of sales reps that are out there that execute unit sales to these physicians. So they leverage clinical and business relationship with these physicians. So we already have about 50 reps that are interested in joining us. So, my sense is that probably 5 will join if they had to do it tomorrow. So we got that group of high caliber pacer and defib reps that are able to work with us to deploy the product. So our goal for 2025 is $2.5 million in sales.
In terms of, looking at some other medical device companies that we've assessed, sometimes we'll end up kind of partnering up with a larger firm to kind of help sell on their behalf, right? Some sort of partnered sales contract. Is that kind of on the table, or do you look at this as more of a direct sale and building your own sales force?
That is an option that we're looking at also. However, our device has a different pricing point. This is a $5,000 unit product. So if you have 300, 500, maybe even a couple $1,000 product, you can't deploy it that easily because you have to sell tons of them to come up with any type of a return on investment. Ours is $5,000, one of the highest. And we don't do one implant. We do 3 to 5 in one afternoon. So imagine $25,000 in one execution. So our plan right now is to utilize an independent pacer reps and move the units that way. I think that will be the most efficient and effective way to do it.
One of the other hindrances to adoption that we'll typically see, right, is if it's not covered by insurance, or if it is the most expensive option, they're going to force you to kind of go through the other options before they say you can use this one. So what does the insurance coverage of this product look like, and how are you thinking about that?
Very good point, Chris. Without insurance coverage, there's no business. So I know there's a lot of great products out there have no insurance coverage. So nobody can pay for it, nobody can buy it. So that's the problem. We have a huge advantage in that. We have 510K, which is a short regulatory process. This is the only implantable electronics that is 510K. And because we're a fast follower in this space, we have an existing reimbursement that's been around for over 15 years. So we'll follow that path. So we'll sell for $5,000, and the reimbursement is $7,600. And in terms of the competition, absolutely it's brutal. But there's only three other companies. So when you have a simpler product, there's 500 guys competing for that one account. With ours, our barrier is technology barrier. Nobody can build it except those big corporate companies. So we got 3 companies. So if we cannot go to a pricing war because we'll lose. If we charge higher, they won't use. So we have to be very much on par with the competitors. And if I go $1 lower, they'll literally go 1,000 lower next day. So I have to stay within that pricing point that is acceptable for the market.
And in terms of thinking about the market and the competition, from my understanding, you guys are the only ones who are kind of the implantable device directly under skin rather than either all the way into the heart or as a patch. Is that correct? Or are there folks doing under skin?
There's 3 other companies that are focusing on under the skin approach as well. So which is a great thing for us because they're paving the path for us. So we're coming in behind as a fast follower with a superior technology and a superior customer service.
So talk to me about some of the superiority elements that come with your product for those direct competitors who are under the skin.
Sure. So they made their device extremely small, which is very sexy, right? You want small device. But with that, you sacrifice the battery power and the wireless connection power. And because the device is so tiny, you're not getting a clear ECG and clear signal. So that's the biggest weakness of those devices. So we made our device slightly bigger without compromising implant time and patient comfort. So there's a fulcrum, there's a point in which it's too big and it won't work, it's too small, it won't work. So that's where competition is right now. So we're at right in the middle of the sweet spot that brings the optimum performance, optimum diagnostics, and also at a much lower cost of manufacturing.
When we look at the overall market opportunity, for those who aren't that aware of kind of how large the heart monitoring space is, give us a sense of what that looks like.
Sure. Just the implantable cardiac monitor for AFib right now is $1 billion a year business. Just for that. And there's only 3 companies in that space. Heart failure is projected to be $5 billion a year business. And $5 billion is not a lot of money if 40, 50, 100 companies are competing for it. But it's a massive amount of money if there's only 3 companies competing for that space. And that's at the infancy of the market. On an overall cardiac monitoring, obviously, for the entire world, we're looking at a $100 billion a year business. But we're not there yet. So our goal is to get the AFib, enter the space in the AFib, and expand into heart failure.
Now, the first layer here is the $5,000 charge for the device. Is there any recurring fees associated with the product?
Not for us. The market dictates the monitoring fees for the physician. So physician is doing the work, obviously. They implanted it, now they're monitoring the patient. So they are the ones that are generating revenue on that. So right now, I believe it's about $36 to $40 per patient per month. So if a physician, let's say, has 10 patients, then they're generating $400 a month by monitoring these patients and following up on that. But there's the other side to that is the data. We own the data. We own the cardiac data. So that is a tremendous value for future operations and predictability.
When you look at that data from the first 39 patients, I'm curious if you can talk to events that you've been able to identify, maybe able to identify better, and then B, just some of the things you're talking about, that connectivity and whatnot, some of the client feedback that you've heard.
Sure. We're not quite there yet, but the data that we're seeing is, of course, we want to see the trending data. As the cardiac performance goes down, we want to see that signal. As the cardiac performance goes back up, we want to see that. And we're seeing that on some patients. So heart failure, for example, we wanted to find the most sickest patient that are coming in and out of the hospital, right? Because that's the biggest problem right now. So we identified those patients and we implanted on those patients. And as they get sicker and sicker, we are seeing the cardiac performance going down. And as they get admitted to the hospital and they get tuned up with medications and diuretics, we see cardiac function slowly going back up. So we're seeing that data. So we are gathering that to submit to the FDA and also for publications. One caveat is we can only see this on patients that got admitted. So we're not at the point of, you're going down, cardiac function is going down, and we cannot say, hey, Dr. Chris, we need to intervene right now before this patient goes even worse. We're not there yet, but we are retrospectively, we're able to see the data on those patients.
In terms of funds being raised today in your current WeFunder round, what are those funds being applied to, and where does that get you?
We're very fortunate because we have a substantial amount in our bank already. So 100% of the money that we're raising from WeFunder will be going toward our 510K effort and maybe even the commercialization effort. So, and we got the battery. We got a next generation of battery, which is one of the most difficult and costly endeavor in our industry because we're completely relying on that battery to be safe and effective inside the body. So we just got that. So the current raise from the WeFunder will help us get to that point, 510K and the commercialization.
I'd love to understand better the 510K process and what exactly that is for those who don't know.
Think of a class 3 as a life-saving devices. Pacemakers, defibrillators, artificial hearts, all those kind of things. So for you to bring that to a market, you got to do a long clinical trial to show super superiority. So that's 5 to 7 year clinical trial and hundreds of millions. Class 2 or 510K is a diagnostic. So X-rays are 510K. $5 million MRI machines are 510K. Even some of the specialized gloves are 510K. And ours fall into that category because we're a monitoring device. Even though our technology is similar to a pacemaker, we're just monitoring. So we fall into that niche of a category. And not all 510Ks have reimbursement, right? So, but we do. So that's where our uniqueness comes in.
Do you think on the battery technology side of things that you mentioned earlier, right now it's 2 years that the device will last. Do you think you'll get to a place where it could be even 3 or 4 years?
Absolutely. So the device there, the battery we're looking at, let me show you an example of, so this is our current battery technology. This is our future battery technology. Much smaller, but same power. Same power. Absolutely. And not only that, the board, the computer chip, already improved. So that's another thing. These legacy companies, those big companies, they don't change models. the device that you got 5 years ago is the same device you're getting today, which is crazy. I mean, nobody that I know has a phone that's 5 years old. And most people change their car within 3 to 5 years. And every year there's a brand new model coming in. In medical industry, it's not like that. It takes forever to make any changes. But because we're so agile and scrappy, even next generation device, we're already getting the next generation battery. We got a next generation chip ready. So we can go a little bit smaller and a lot more powerful, which the other guys cannot do.
For those who are on the line about investing, I'll give you the last word. What's your final pitch to them?
We raised significant amount from top entrepreneurs in our space. Mr. Larry Lawson had a $1.3 billion exit in the remote monitoring technology. Peter Boyd had a huge exit in the heart failure technology, and Lars had a huge exit in the cybersecurity technology. All, except Peter, they all had billion-dollar exits. So we have the support of the industry experts in that space, along with we're part of the Stanford StartX and part of a Johnson & Johnson's J Labs. So it's a massively long and complex vetting process that we had to go through to show our capabilities. But most importantly, we implanted in 39 patients. Not a single startups that I know of were able to achieve that, what we did in a time that we did and the costing we did. So we did this in half the time and half the cost of any other startups that we can think of. And those companies might be lucky to implant maybe 3 to 5. We did 39.
If you liked what you heard on the show today, you can check why FutureCardia scored a 4.0 out of 5 at kingscrowd.com. You can now invest on WeFunder until April 30th, 2025. And please like, subscribe, and share our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so more listeners like you can find us. Thanks for listening.